Hey, folks, Tim Miller here. And I want to talk to you about something that's actually very painful to talk about today because there's so much going on in our country right now that some really important things are kind of slipping through. We're just not giving them the attention that we should. And let me say this, if you're a parent, if you're a grandparent, you desperately need to hear what we're going to talk about. Let's start with this.
And the FBI says it has stopped a potential disaster, a school shooting at a high school and an elementary school. They have arrested a teenager in Maryland who they say had detailed plans to target both his high school and where he went to elementary school. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, now.
Tonight, the FBI, along with state and local authorities in Maryland, say they thwarted 18-year-old Alex Yee's plans to shoot up his high school and his former elementary school, after authorities discovered what they called a manifesto with detailed plans to commit mass murder.
Yee writes about targeting his former elementary school because little kids make easier targets. He strategized on how to access the easiest classrooms in his high school and how he would be able to sneak a gun into the school.
Yee, whose legal name is Andrea but uses male and female pronouns and goes by Alex, was known to authorities as having a history of mental health issues and an obsession with school shootings.
Folks, I don't know how to stress enough the fact that our nation is in serious trouble. And major issues that 10 or 15 years ago would have been huge are now being kind of just another news story. Folks, I want to make it clear the cancer of evil is stage 4, and it's spreading across our entire nation. And if we don't begin to wake up and we don't begin to take action, then this cancer is going to kill our country. Now, I get a lot of folks that say, oh, Tim, it's too late. I don't believe that. I'm a man of faith. I believe that things can turn around. But let me say this. I think it starts with you and I. I think it starts with people that love our country, love our God, love the ability for good to reign. Oh, by the way, and are willing to do something about it. You see, folks, there are many, many, many people in the U.S. that sit back with their clicker and they change the channel, and that's what they do. They don't get involved. They don't take action. You know, that's one of the things that our team's committed. We're going to take action. We're going to help people know how to protect themselves, what the mindset, what the skills need to be to protect themselves. Because, folks, I don't have to convince you. A storm is not coming. It's made landfall, and it's a Cat 7 hurricane. And if we don't begin to stand, then it's not going to go well, and it may not go well quickly. And you may say to me, well, Tim, I don't know what to do. Well, let me say this about that. Do something. Begin to prepare yourself. Begin to prepare your family. Folks, I got to tell you, I have grandkids that go to public schools. Let's think about the news article we just saw from this week that said this kid was planning a mass attack on his high school and on his elementary school. Now, what's going on in the minds of kids today where mass killing is okay? You see, it wasn't too long ago, was it, that the Covenant School experienced a very similar situation. Somebody struggling with gender identity had mental health issues, but they went in and killed a bunch of people at the school, shot through the doors, made entry, systematically killed teachers and children. And all of us were horrified, right? Well, the problem, and we knew this in the Secret Service, the problem with an assassination attempt would be it would spur on a whole lot of other assassination attempts. And that's exactly what's happening now. Many of our kids are confused. They don't have any moral clarity. They have parents that are disconnected. They're not teaching them right and wrong, and so they make their own right and wrong up. Now, if you look at what's happened on our college campuses, and I'm going to do a separate video on this, but folks, the rise of anti-Semitism in the United States looks exactly like it did in 1930s Germany. They're being villainized. I mean, they were attacked, and a lot of Jewish people were slaughtered, murdered, including babies in their cribs. Now, I know that war is ugly. I know that it's messy, and I know the conflict in Gaza. I would pray for everybody there to, be protected and be safe. But that's not how it works when you, as an ideology, go in and begin to murder, slaughter innocent people. A just nation goes back and says, we're gonna take care of that. Oh, by the way, I was in DC during 9/11. I remember the anger as planes flew into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. I was downtown, right next to the White House when that occurred. And I will tell you something, folks. Nobody told the United States, oh, don't, be restrained. No. George W. Bush then was very clear. You're for us or you're against us. Crystal clear. And then the wrath of the U.S. military was unleashed. And for a season, we checked Al-Qaeda. Now, the bad news is they're right back in business again. My contacts inside say that the whole thing with ISIS being defeated and Al-Qaeda being gone, that's just a pure lie. Everybody's reconstituting. Now, here's what's scary, and I'll talk about this in another video. In some of these rallies on college campuses, with our kids attending those campuses, they're shouting death to America. Hey, folks, I don't know if you realize it or not, but that's us. Death to us. And yet we're it's the boiling water and the frog situation. We are not aware of how dangerous things are in this country. And getting back to school security, I just want to remind you that if you love your kids, you're going to get engaged. Well, what do you mean, Tim? We have a school board. They don't necessarily like, conservative points of view or whatever. Here's what I know. Go stand in those council meetings, speak. Let them know you are holding them accountable for your child's safety and security and what they're being taught. It's amazing to me, and I want to be careful how this comes across. It's amazing to me how many people are willing to talk about the problem, but do nothing to address the problem. And folks, America has a massive problem. Right now, we are witnessing terrorists. I'm not saying that. They're saying it. They're praising Hezbollah. There was a Hezbollah flag. Folks, for a U.S. Marine, praising Hezbollah, a terrorist organization, is exceptionally painful, given they blew up the Marine barracks in Beirut, I think it was 1982, and killed hundreds of U.S. Marines. Let me tell you, folks, I know people that were there. And guess what? When that happened, we didn't go, oh, well, there's another side to the story. We called them terrorists, and we went after them. And folks, I hope you understand that there's no middle ground in this ideology, just like there's no middle ground between evil and good. You got to pick a side. And when you pick a side, you've got to stand with that side. And as I listened to this report today, it took me back to Cho at Virginia Tech, similarities there in terms of serious mental health issues, but also serious conflicts in terms of gender identity. We saw that in the Covenant shooting. By the way, they still refuse to release the manifesto from the Covenant shooting. Now, why is that? I think because it will clearly show a mindset from that, transgender individual, how evil she or he was and how the planning was extensive to kill, murder, and destroy anybody that opposed them. Oh, by the way, that's Satan's agenda, isn't it? If you believe scripture, it's clear. Jesus said that the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. 3, right there. Now, I want to ask you, in our nation, who's advocating for stealing, killing, and destroying? Now, think about it. Look at the riots. Look at all the open robberies. Look at the street crime. Look at the murder rates. Who is advocating for stealing, killing, and destroying? And who's advocating for good? You got to choose. And this is not a sermon. I'm not preaching at anybody. I'm just telling you, you're going to have to pick a side. And what I'm seeing now is this rise of violence followed by almost an insensitivity to the violence, a desensitization to violence. And I got to tell you, folks, I've been in very, very, very violent places. And it's one thing to watch it on TV. It's another thing to go, oh, it's so terrible. But I'll tell you, when that violence visits you, you will never be the same. Now, why am I saying this? Because, folks, it's time for us across the nation to be people of action. And you may say, I get a lot of folks, coming back to the channel and they're saying, hey, I'm in my 70s. What do you want me to do? Be SEAL Team 6? No, I want you to be you, but I want you to stand. I want you to be strong and resolute. Because if you're older, you're not going to be on this earth much longer. That's just the reality of life. The question is, what are you going to do while you're on this earth? And I was recently doing some training for an organization, and they were talking about just how violent it's becoming so quickly. And one of the things that the conversations that we had, okay, we all get it. What should we do about it? And there are a few things that we can do about it. And I talk about it on this channel all the time. Number one, prepare yourself and your body. I don't care how old you are. I don't care your physical condition. You can choose today to change that. You can choose to begin to exercise. You can begin to choose healthy habits. You can begin to choose things that are going to allow you not to be engaged mentally and all the negative. I have a friend of mine, a retired FBI agent, dear friend of mine, and he goes, Tim, with everything going on, I just got to get away. I got to go into the mountains and go camping. And he does it like every other month because he's looking at what's going on and he's going, man, I've got to self-care first. And that's what I'm going to say to you. Are you self-caring? Are you caring for yourself? Do you have routines every day? Many people, Willie Nelson said when he learned to wake up and count his blessings, his whole life changed. Well, folks, the reality is our country is having challenges, but there's still a lot to be thankful for. And so are you starting your day in a positive mental mindset? Are you looking at things that you can do to make a difference? Maybe it's volunteering on the school board. Maybe it's, going and volunteering at the school to see what's going on. Because, folks, I am concerned about what our kids are facing every day. I'm concerned about what they're hearing in schools. And the only way that that's going to change is if you, the American people, begin to say, no more, we're going to be involved. We're going to have our voice. And see, here's the problem. And it kind of is what it is. We've been told that if we say anything, we're racist, bigots, angry, whatever. Here's what I know. On the conservative right's been accused of being Nazis and authoritarians. Here's what I know. What's being shouted at Columbia University and across our campuses was exactly the rhetoric that was being shouted in 1930s Germany by crowds of brown shirts, targeting a racial group for complete annihilation and destruction. You see, fascism has one pathway, and that's to complete control and domination. They're not stupid. They realize they don't want to project that, so they'll accuse others of being that the whole time they're working towards the agenda. Folks, there's nothing good about Antifa. There's nothing redeemable about that organization. From the start, they have lived for anarchy. They want to overthrow the government. They can't stand conservative principles. They hate the founding fathers. And so violence is the way you take over. Now, who's behind them? Good question. I personally have some thoughts. I think the Chinese would love nothing more than to undermine our entire system and way of life in this. I think the Russians, I think, the Venezuelans. I mean, we've seen Venezuelan prisons emptied with hardcore criminals to the Mexican border and simply walking across. Oh, well, now they're targeting high-end homes with sophisticated burglaries. Really? What a shock. We've seen our children murdered by violent illegal immigrants. Oh, but we don't want to say anything because everybody has a right to come to America. Oh, by the way, I agree with that, but you do it legally. You do it in a controlled manner. Now, many of you after my last video said, well, Tim, do you trust the government? And let me just say this about where we are as a country. Do I trust the government? No, I never trust the government. I didn't trust the government when I worked for the government. Why? Because that's a healthy, cynical approach. I want the government to prove to me that they're trustworthy. Now, let me say this. There are some that have demonstrated they are not trustworthy. And there are others who I know that I'd go to battle with and lay my life down for them. There are still a lot of patriots in our nation that, quite frankly, need your support. They need your help. They need your vote. They need to have folks put in place over them that can hopefully stand against this evil and try to make a difference. Getting back to what we talked about, I'm sorry. I just, when I saw this report, it took me right back to Covenant. And just so you know, there have been, in 2024, there have been in 2023, there have been 82 school shootings on campuses, according to CNN, reliable source. In 2024, so far, there's been 18. If you look back to 2008 for the entire year, so 82 in 2023, in 2008, there were 18 total. The facts speak. You hear a lot about, oh, crime's not on the rise. That's insane. And I have a theory for why they're not reporting crime. I have a theory. I think in some cases things are being redefined to minimize numbers. But here's the reality. I don't have to convince you that things are getting more violent. You're seeing it. And thank God for YouTube. Thank God for YouTube. That people can get out and communicate truth to the American people. That there can be differing types of opinions. Now, how much longer that'll go on for, I don't know. But thank God for YouTube. And so here we are looking at another school shooting that was prevented by the FBI. And this would have been a massive one. It would have been, if he'd been successful, directed at a high school, an elementary school. And oh, by the way, I used to work in tandem on FBI task forces. I will tell you, for every one they identify, there are a whole lot of them that they don't know about. And that applies to terrorism. Folks, we have active folks invited into our country that are now surrounded by like-minded people who are advocating for the destruction of America, and they live right here. So let me ask you a question. Would you invite a known murderer who's threatened to kill you to come live with you in your house? That's insane. But that's what's happening in our country. We've now shifted in many areas to being way more concerned for the criminal and his rights than we are for the victims that are being victimized horrifically. It was interesting. I don't know if you saw, but Adam Schiff was carjacked. Adam Schiff running for Senate in California, the big, guy that's against anything conservative. Oh, by the way, violence came to him. Now the question is, will that change him? Will he go, whoa, wait a minute. This is not good if it's happening to me, which a truly honest, elected official would go, no, we got to change this. This is, it came home. But we'll see. So real quick, let me just talk to you, and I know I've kind of been on a roll today, but let me talk to you about 3 things we learn from this news story. I'll talk, as I always do, about the before, the during, and the after of a potential school shooting. Let's talk about the before. Thank God somebody who apparently this kid sent a manifesto to one of his friends who was smart enough to read it and go, whoa, wait a minute. This is not good. And he forwarded it on to law enforcement. Thank God. Because had he done that, when we would have found out about this? After shots were fired, after parents were screaming to the school, crying, hoping and praying that their kid was not one of the ones that was slaughtered. So beforehand, the FBI did its job, police did its job, kudos to both of them. But beforehand, what can you do? Well, the first thing is you have a conversation with your kid. And folks, I can't be any more upfront about the importance of being prepared for a crisis. And oh, by the way, that includes your children now. Your children are now potentially going into war zones. I've trained schools and teachers where they get it, that, we look at some things that have gone wrong. We look at Uvalde, we look at other things, and the police are going to be there, but you're not sure when. And in the meantime, your teachers and your kids better know what to do, because in those split seconds, those decisions that are made are huge. So beforehand, you train your child. By the way, if you're not training your children in self-defense, you need to do it, because they're going to be raised in a very different world. I was talking to a dear African-American lady that I met, and she's probably in her 70s. And we were talking about just how things are changing. And she said, the problem is that the parents no longer are responsible for the actions of their kids. They need to be engaged. They need to be setting boundaries. They need to be establishing limits. And when that happens and the parents are accountable and responsible, we'll see a change. And although I do really agree with her, I think also having a strong father in the home, having a male role model that, I know in my teens, I was, type A squared, and I needed a strong dad to sometimes remind me I wasn't all that, and perhaps I needed to, downshift a little bit. So have those conversations. Get your kids training. Please get your kids training. And also just walk through them. We talk on this channel a lot about the importance of mental preparation for potential crisis situations. As you're driving somewhere, not in fear, please. This is not about fear. This is wisdom and preparation. I talked to a lady on the channel, and she was like, hey, I want you to know that because of what you talk about, when our family goes into a restaurant or are pulling in, we go, hey guys, what would we do? If there was a fire, what would we do if there was a violent incident? And, I just love that. because and I know we've talked about this, but the only way to prepare yourself for crisis, and this comes out of the Marine Corps, police, Secret Service, is to mentally prepare through imagination and emotion your mind, because your emergency files rest in your subconscious mind. And so if you picture something and you go, what would I do that? And you think through it, then you're preparing an emergency file. So beforehand, before your kids go to school, maybe you even walk to school with them and you say, hey, what would you do if? How would you respond? So during an incident, they need to understand, based on what you've done before, how they can protect themselves. Now, I get it. If they're young kids, that they're not going to be able to respond, especially on, first, second, third, fourth. But I'll tell you what, if you get middle schoolers and high schoolers of the mindset that we're not going to sit here and be shot, we're going to train, we're going to prepare, and then you equip them with how to do it, they can be a profoundly effective force if it happens during. But also, during, you need to understand, back up to before, you need to understand what the school's plan is. Where's the reunification site? What is their plan for lockdown? Can they lock down the school? I'll tell you, I do a lot of consulting, and all of them have a lockdown program until you look at the doors and you realize you ain't locking nothing down. You don't even have real locks on the doors. So those are things you need to ask and be involved in. Attend the school board meetings, ask the questions. Now, many will say to you, oh, we have a school resource officer there, which is fine. I would remind you that so did Parkland in South Florida, and he was not prepared for what happened that day with Nicholas Cruz. So an SRO doesn't mean your kids are safe. It means that they've taken a very positive step to protect your kids. So let's get into the during. Hopefully you've had those discussions. You've talked with your kids. You've been present at the school boards. You've asked the questions about security. You understand reunification sites and the process of what will happen. And then you ask before, are your teachers trained to respond? And I'm just going to be honest. In many, many, many cases, their training is a video. Well, I say to everybody I train, if you think that watching a video prepares you for an incident, then I should be Jason Bourne because I've watched every Jason Bourne movie. The reality is they need to have hands-on training. So are they trained? Now, during the event, if you prepared your child, you're going to instruct them, be calm, be measured, you know what to do, and then follow the directions of the teachers. And then do what you have to do based on the situation. Because again, at Virginia Tech, classroom full of young adults sat there as Cho systematically, took their lives. And that's unacceptable. Not today. We need to train. We need to be prepared. So during, your kids need to be prepared, trained, and ready to respond. And then afterwards, folks, I don't care if it's a carjacking, I don't care if it's an active shooter, any violent incident requires that your kids and you process what happened. And a lot of folks don't think about that. They think, okay, I got through it, I survived. It could be a terrific car accident. And what we're seeing in the country is post-traumatic stress syndrome is increasing at record levels. And because it's untreated, it's affecting a lot of people. The National Alliance for Mental Illness says that about 23 veterans per day take their life. I want you to think about that. 23 heroes that were willing to go overseas and risk their lives. They take their life every day, most of which are PTSD related. So, folks, we've got a long way to go right now to turn this around. Here's the good news. You can make a difference. Every person listening to me can make a difference. But instead of scrolling in YouTube or browsing on the internet or flipping the channels, you might need to get out and go vote. You might need to get out and attend a school board meeting. You might need to put a lot of work into standing strong for things that matter to all of us. Because, folks, I will tell you, if we don't, the tendency now is to not speak up. We don't want to be canceled. We don't want to be labeled a bigot. We don't want to be told that, oh, you're so narrow-minded. Folks, I'd rather stand for something than fall for everything. And unfortunately, that's what's happening. And I know there are going to be hate comments on this. I get it. That's okay. Hate me all you want. I want to be a truth teller. I want to be objective. This is not a party thing. I know good people in the Republican Party. I know good people in the Democratic Party. I know good people in the Independent Party. But the question is, who are you really? What do you stand for? Not what party are you a part of? Are you okay with the direction that we're going with open borders? And I could go on, I won't. So, folks, I hope this is helpful. Remember the before, during, and the after. The after is really important because you're going to need follow-up. You're going to need counseling. You're going to need to think through, wow, how has this affected my child, myself? Because unfortunately, tragedy can follow even after the tragedy if we don't process well. Unfortunately, after some of the school shootings, there have been other students didn't process well, and they didn't do well. So, folks, I hope this is helpful. Hey, can I ask you to do me a favor? I'm told YouTube's unsubscribing all of my followers. I have a passion to get the truth out here. I have a passion to help you, and I can't do that if all my followers are being unsubscribed. I'm going to start doing a whole lot more lives. I'm probably going to do one over the weekend, and I'll project it out because many of you are saying, hey, we didn't know, and it's my fault. I'm still learning the YouTube game, but thank you for your patience. But if you would, like, subscribe, share, and then send me a comment. Tell me what you think. If I'm on track, or if you have ideas how we can help. I got some great information on water purification from a good friend of mine, and he sent it to me, and I'm going to do a future video where I share those things because remember, food, water, shelter, and your ability to protect it. If you don't have those things, you better start now. Because when I hear, repeated warnings, and oh, by the way, somebody said, oh, we can't trust Director Ray, and, you shouldn't highlight him. And here's what I'm going to say to that. If there's baseline information that he's trying to cover himself by putting out to the public, I'd much rather be prepared than unprepared. And again, I've always been very distrustful of the government. I think the government needs to be watched carefully by the American people. And when they begin to deviate, that we ought to hold them accountable. And that's what our founding fathers said, and that's what I believe. And quite frankly, that's what I fought for all of my life, was the freedom to stand, speak, and to live my life free of oppression by the government. So I hope and pray this is helpful for you. I know this one's kind of been a little bit heavy, and but folks, I want to be a truth teller. I cannot sit by, and I'm asking myself the same questions, by the way, that I'm asking you. We're out there training. I'm out there trying to do everything. I'm actually pulling a team of some really qualified folks that have the same heart and training skills, because quite frankly, the requirements, more and more people, across the nation and businesses are asking, hey, what do we need to do? We don't know what to do. And folks, again, skills are a result of training and practicing to lead to skills. So I hope and pray this is helpful for you. I know this has been a long one, but please hit the like, subscribe, share button, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon on a live near you. God bless you. Stay safe.